I call the member for Vaucluse.
Madam Speaker, last Thursday, the 8th of March, I had the pleasure of celebrating International Women's Day at a breakfast with students, teachers and their special guests at Kambala in the electorate of Vaucluse. And I was made really welcome by them. It was a very wet day, and also by the principal, Mrs Margaret White. Kambala is an Anglican private girls' school on the shore above Rose Bay, and it's overlooking glorious Sydney Harbour, which we couldn't see that day but for rain. The school caters for kids as young as 6 months in their early learning centre at Hampshire House, right through to senior students in Year 12. And this year is a particularly important year for Kambala because it marks its 125th anniversary. It's a dynamic school community encouraging students to achieve personal excellence in a supporting environment. And the school, which is a single-sex school for women, for young girls, develops them to be courageous people of integrity who are going to be empowered to make a really positive contribution to our changing world. And that's a fitting goal to reflect on last Thursday on International Women's Day. Of course, International Women's Day is celebrated across the world on the 8th of March, and it's a time to recognise and celebrate the important economic, political and social achievements of women across the world. Regardless, I should say, also of ethnic, cultural, economic or political differences, it's also a day to recognise the significant barriers to achieving women's economic security and equality which continue to exist. International Women's Day in 2012 focuses on the empowering of rural women and girls. And reflecting on this theme with the Kambala community last week, I read some of this year's International Women's Day message from the United Nations Secretary-General, Ban Ki-moon. And his message, I think, is worth noting in this House. He says, gender equality and the empowerment of women are gaining ground worldwide. There are more women heads of state or government than ever, and the highest proportion of women serving as government ministers. Women are exercising influence in business circles. More girls go to school and are growing up healthier and better equipped to realise their potential. Despite this momentum, there's a long way to go before women and girls can be said to enjoy the fundamental rights, freedom and dignity that are their birthright and that will guarantee their well-being more generally. Nowhere, Madam Speaker, is this more apparent than in the world's rural areas. Rural women and girls, to whom this year's International Women's Day is devoted, make up one quarter of the global population, yet routinely figure at the bottom of every economic, social and political indicator, from income and education to health and participation in decision-making. I believe that knowledge and education is the key to addressing this disadvantage. As I reminded the young women at Kambala last Thursday, education empowers us as women, it makes us more equal, it gives us option for our future, it maximises our prospects of understanding one another, and most importantly, education gives women economic independence. And despite the international gender gap in education closing, there are vast differences within and across countries. Far too many girls do not have access to schooling, they leave school too early, or they fail to complete school with adequate skills to access further educational opportunities. Here at home, we know that girls and young women in remote and regional areas in New South Wales have less opportunities for completing their school education and going on to further education than those in our cities and metropolitan areas. There are many factors which contribute to this, whether it be access to decent technology, greater distances to travel to education, or families who may be struggling with financial burdens and health issues. This is a reality, and we've got to do better for these young women. As the Parliamentary Secretary for Education, Tertiary Education and Skills, and Chair of the Government's Tertiary Pathways Review Committee, I'm looking forward to presenting a report to the Government on June 30 with recommendations on how we can make the pathways from school to vocational education and training and higher education more accessible for students, including those in remote and regional parts of our state. As I celebrated with the students at Kambala, it was clear to me that above all, International Women's Day is about the future. It's about supporting the enormous potential of girls and women wherever they may live, whether that's in rural parts of the world or in New South Wales or otherwise. Where you live must not be a barrier to realising your dreams and achieving your goals. For this reason, we've got to work hard to create opportunities for girls and young women in remote and regional areas of New South Wales so they indeed themselves have no doubt about this. Madam Speaker, I commend my private... Oh, no. Mr Speaker, I commend my private member's statement to the House.
The House will now proceed with private members' statements. Are there any statements?